Most of us who grew up in this kind of dynamic get told the same thing. She was doing her best. It wasn't that bad. Calling it bullying is too harsh, too dramatic, maybe even disrespectful. So you carry this pain that has no permission to exist. You feel small around someone who was supposed to make you feel safe. And instead of naming what's actually happening, you blame yourself for feeling it. Here's what the science on early attachment actually shows. The most disorienting form of bullying doesn't happen on school playgrounds. It happens at home with the first person you ever needed. When the person responsible for building your sense of self is also the one chipping away at it, your nervous system can't file that away as danger. It just learns to live inside the contradiction. Today I want to name 5 specific things that happened, things you've probably minimized or explained away, and show you exactly how they became the template for how you attach to people now. Welcome to Childhood Decoded. We take childhood experiences and translate them through the lens of attachment science and nervous system research, not to assign blame, to give you accurate language for what happened, because that language is usually the thing people have been missing for years. The 5 signs. Sign 1. She criticized you and called it love. Maybe it was your weight, your voice, the way you laughed, the choices you were making. And when the criticism landed and you flinched, she'd say, "I'm just being honest with you. Someone has to be." That's what real love looks like. This is the sign that takes the longest to name because it arrived wrapped in something that felt like truth. She may have genuinely cared about you, but criticism without emotional safety isn't guidance. It's exposure. A child doesn't need someone to catalog their flaws. They need someone who can hold all of who they are, including the parts that need development, without making those parts feel like proof of unworthiness. Your nervous system learned love and pain arrive together. Closeness means scrutiny. Warmth is something you earn, not something you're given. Sign 2, your accomplishments were never quite enough. You got an A, she asked why it wasn't an A+. You made the team, she mentioned who made captain. You did the thing, and instead of landing somewhere, you were already being moved to the next benchmark. Carl Rogers, who developed person-centered therapy in the 1950s, had a name for this: conditional positive regard. He identified it as one of the most psychologically destabilizing things a caregiver can do because it ties a child's sense of worth to performance rather than to simply existing. The child who grows up this way doesn't develop the internal stability that comes from being celebrated for who they are. They develop a treadmill instead, and they spend decades running on it wondering why they never feel like enough. Sign 3. She compared you to other children, often your sibling, the neighbor's kid, a cousin, someone she wished you were more like. She may have called it motivation, but comparison is rejection wearing the costume of advice. A child doesn't hear you could do more in those moments. They hear, as you are right now, you are not what I wanted. I am looking at other people and finding what I wish you were. Identity doesn't form in a vacuum. It forms in the mirror of the people raising you. When that mirror is always reflecting someone else, you stop knowing who you actually are. Sign 4. She punished you with silence. When you upset her, whether that meant making a mistake, having a feeling she didn't like, or simply not complying, she withdrew, stopped speaking to you, took away her warmth until you apologized, fixed it, or made yourself small enough to be let back in. For a child, that is one of the most disorienting forms of punishment that exists, because a child's nervous system is organized around connection. Disconnection doesn't read as a consequence. It reads as abandonment. And so, the child learns. My behavior determines whether I am loved. Whether love stays or goes is on me. That's where anxiety is actually born, not in dramatic events. In the slow accumulation of ordinary moments where love felt like it could disappear. Sign 5. Your feelings were treated as a problem. When you cried, you were too sensitive. When you were angry, you were disrespectful. When you were scared, you were being dramatic. Your emotional responses didn't get curiosity or comfort. They got correction, management, dismissal. Research on emotion socialization, including work by psychologist John Gottman, consistently finds that children whose feelings are invalidated over time develop two things: a deep sense of shame around having emotions at all, and an eroded ability to trust their own internal signals, because those signals kept being told they were wrong. You didn't become anxious, reactive, or emotionally shut down because something is broken in you. You became that way because you were taught repeatedly that your inner world was a problem to be managed rather than a signal to be heard. If 2 or 3 of these felt familiar, stay with me. Because what these signs were is only the first part. What matters more is what they made you believe about yourself, and how that belief showed up in every relationship that came after. Most conversations about toxic parent dynamics stop at the behavior. What actually does the lasting damage is the specific confusion that comes from it being her. With a bully at school, your nervous system has a clear job. That person is dangerous, create distance. But a mother is your primary attachment figure. Your nervous system was wired to seek safety from her. So when the threat and the safe haven are the same person, your brain can't categorize her as dangerous. It does the only thing that keeps the relationship survivable. It turns the confusion inward. It lands on the conclusion a child can live with: I must be the problem. That conclusion is where your attachment style was formed. If you developed anxious attachment, you became hyper-vigilant to rejection. You learned to scan for disappointment before it arrived, to explain yourself before you were accused, to apologize for things that didn't need apologies. The person who was supposed to love you unconditionally made that love feel precarious, and your nervous system has been bracing for loss ever since. Avoidant attachment looks different, but comes from the same place. You learned that needing people is where you get hurt, so you built self-sufficiency into armor. You tell yourself you don't need anyone, but what's actually true is that needing someone never felt safe. You manage the risk of closeness by never fully arriving in it. And if you swing between both, reaching for connection one moment and pushing it away the next, attachment researchers call this disorganized attachment. Your nervous system never got a coherent strategy for being loved because the person who was supposed to provide that was also the source of the fear. You want closeness and you sabotage it. You wonder why relationships feel like so much work. None of this is a character flaw. It is a measurable outcome of a specific early experience. And knowing that changes what's actually required to heal, because it means the pattern isn't who you are. It's what you learned. 3. What actually helps healing from this kind of wound is not primarily a cognitive process. You cannot think your way out of a nervous system pattern that formed before you had language. Understanding these concepts, naming the signs, watching videos like this one, none of that is healing by itself. It's orientation. It tells you where you are, it doesn't move you. What actually shifts attachment patterns is experience. Attachment researchers call it corrective relational experience, and the name is exactly what it sounds like. Your system needs to experience safety and connection, not just understand that safety is possible. That can happen in therapy with someone trained in attachment work. It can happen in friendships where you practice showing up without performing. It can happen anywhere you let yourself be seen as you actually are and find out you're not punished for it. The rewiring is in the experience, repeated over time, not in the insight. The other piece that doesn't get talked about enough is grief. Not necessarily about your current relationship with your mother, about the relationship you needed and didn't get. There's a particular kind of loss in having a mother who was physically present and emotionally unsafe, who loved you and also hurt you, who you can't simply release from your mind. That grief doesn't move through understanding. It moves through feeling it, through actually letting yourself mourn what a child needed and didn't receive. That mourning isn't weakness. It's the body finally processing something it was never permitted to feel at the time. And underneath both of those, quietly, is learning to treat your own emotional signals as information, not problems, not evidence that something is wrong with you, just information. The voice that got called too sensitive, too dramatic, too much. That voice was not wrong, it just wasn't safe yet. If this video gave you language for something you've been carrying for a long time, subscribe. New videos every week on the patterns that form in childhood and how they show up in adult relationships, in the nervous system, and in the way you see yourself. And if you want to go deeper on the attachment piece, the next video covers why anxious and avoidant attachment keep finding each other. It gets into the exact dynamic that keeps replaying in your relationships and what it actually takes to interrupt it. This is Childhood Decoded. I'll see you there.